Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Tahira Carter, and I'm the Communications Manager at BirdsCaribbean. And today I'm really happy to be your moderator for this session on Birding 101, because like many of you, I still have a lot to learn. And I'm sure I'll be asking lots of questions today as well. So as Lisa mentioned at the top of the session, we're hoping for a very interactive activity today. So feel free to ask your questions throughout. We're going to try to answer as many of them as possible, and there will be a Q&A section at the end. So before we get started, I'd like to quickly share some background information about BirdsCaribbean with you. So Lisa, you can go to the next slide. In case you're not familiar with us, we are a regional nonprofit organization dedicated to the protection and conservation of Caribbean birds and their habitats. So the Caribbean islands are actually a hotspot for biodiversity. We have 171 endemic birds, and these are birds that you can find in these islands, in our Caribbean islands, and nowhere else in the world. So at BirdsCaribbean, our mission is to raise awareness, encourage sound science, and empower our local partners to build a region where people appreciate, conserve, and benefit from thriving bird populations and ecosystems. We have an amazing network of people throughout the islands that are dedicated to the study and conservation of Caribbean birds, and we invite you to join our network. We also have a journal called the Journal of Caribbean Ornithology, or JCO, where we publish articles on recent research about Caribbean birds. We invite you to follow us on social media at BirdsCaribbean. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and of course on Instagram as well, where we're very active. Right now, our Caribbean Endemic Bird Festival is on, CEBF. This is an annual bird festival that we celebrate for 1 month every spring. We feature a different Caribbean endemic bird almost every day. I believe we're up to number 83, 85. We're moving so quickly. I think we're past 85 now. We did, number 85 was the last bird that we did. And we give natural history facts on the birds. We have a coloring book that coloring page that you can download, free puzzles. You can also see videos of the bird and listen to audio recordings of its call. So there's lots of resources. We invite you to follow us on social media, check out the website. You can scroll through all of those over 80 endemic birds that you can only find in the Caribbean region and learn so much about them. All this information is on our website for free, for download, and for your enjoyment. We also have a different theme every year. And this year we're celebrating the theme, Loving Birds is Human Nature. And this just speaks to the natural connection that humans have shared with birds since the beginning of time. So as part of this festival, we're hosting a short story and poetry competition. We invite you to participate in this as well, to share with us your experiences with birds, whether in your backyard, out in nature, or any part of your island where you're outside and you have the ability to interact with birds. Share with us any special experiences that you may have had. We want to hear from you. We would love it if you would submit a poem or a short story of a special experience that you've had with a bird out in nature. So another thing that is happening very soon is Global Big Day. And I'm not sure how many of you may have heard of Global Big Day, but it's the one day of the year where everyone all over the world is encouraged to go out and watch birds. So this can be just 10 minutes in your backyard, or you can spend the entire day running around to different sites and seeing as many birds as you can. It's lots of fun. If you haven't participated before, we invite you to join us. As the years before, we will be doing teams again this year, where it's friendly competition, camaraderie, competing between teams. We invite you to, there's the bit.ly link that's on the graphic that Lisa is sharing there. We invite you to come on, see if there's any teams that are already established that you would like to join. If not, we invite you to create a team of your own. This year, we are encouraging country teams. And this is not something that we've done before. We've had a few country teams, but this year we're really encouraging you to create a team for your country. So if you're from St. Lucia, for example, and you notice that there's not a St. Lucia team, go ahead and create a team. And then other St. Lucians who can join your team. You can also encourage your friends, your family members to join as well and help us. You will be raising funds this year. We're raising funds to help Caribbean nationals get to our conference, which I'll tell you a little bit about in just a short while, our international conference that we'll be having in San Juan, Puerto Rico this year. But you are raising funds to help bird conservation in the Caribbean, and you can join, you can bird from anywhere in the world. and just pick any one of those teams, and all of the birds that you see, you will be submitting them to eBird. Once you go to the link, you will get more information on how you can sign up and exactly how you're going to be submitting the names of the birds that you see on Global Big Day, which is May 14th. Okay, so the final thing I'd like to mention before I hand you over to our amazing presenters is our upcoming conference in Puerto Rico. Like I just said, this year we're hosting it jointly with the American Ornithological Society, AOS, from June 27th to July 2nd. And we invite anybody that's interested in bird and nature to join us. You can learn more at the bit.ly link that's shared there, AOS-BC-22. And you'll get all the information there on the conference. So without further ado, I believe we have one last slide that's encouraging. Oh, sorry. Okay. So without further ado, I will now hand you over to our presenters for today, Mr. Scott Johnson, environmental scientist at BRON Ltd. He was formerly a science officer at the Bahamas National Trust, and Dr. Lisa Sorenson, executive director at BirdsCaribbean, both very knowledgeable, and they will take us through today's session on Birding 101. Over to you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. And today we're going to learn about birds. And for those people who may or may not have ever went out birding, hopefully at the end of this, this birding webinar, you will be able to say, hey, I know how to go out and look at birds. I know how to experience look at a habitat and be able to tell, well, hey, this bird lives here or maybe not, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you look at this slide here, you see this wealth of diversity of birds. As Tiara mentioned, there's over 171 endemic species here. And there are over 500 species of birds that are found in the Caribbean. And of those, you have over 150 species that are migratory. So this region shows a wealth of bird diversity, and it is one of our biological hotspots because it has such rich diversity of plants, birds, and other animals. Next slide, please.
Say, Scott.
Yes.
We're hearing your lovely daughter in the background. If there's any chance that you can minimize the sound, that'd be great.
Okay, so let me give that a try.
Hang tight, people. I'll continue on for Scott while he's checking on his daughter. So, all right. So as Scott was saying, there's a wealth of birds in the Caribbean. We also have the Caribbean islands serve as a winter home or stopover site for many, many migratory birds. This includes many warblers, songbirds, like you see here in this picture. We're just blessed to have birds of so many different colors come spend the winter with us. And it just brightens our backyards and our gardens. And they arrive in the early fall, and then they depart by the spring. All right, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is that you have some species of birds that are what we would call like they're migratory endemics, because when they come to the Caribbean, they stay in the Caribbean. There are other migratory birds that would travel through the Caribbean going south to South America and other places. But we have some birds that reside exclusively in the Caribbean. For example, the Kirtland's warbler is found almost exclusively in the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, as well as maybe a few other islands, but they are concentrated in the Bahama archipelago during the winter period. And then you also have other birds like the Bicknell's thrush, which thrives in places like the Dominican Republic. And so this just goes to show that these birds love the Caribbean and they enjoy spending the winter season down here. The Caribbean is also home to a variety of different breeding and migratory shorebirds. Some of them are breeding residents, such as this beautiful Wilson's plover that you have here. which you can find throughout parts of the Caribbean, as well as piping plovers, which the Bahamas is known to having one of the largest wintering populations of piping plovers in the world. And then you also have our own population of American oyster catchers, as well as a few other wonderful species that are threatened, such as the red knot, and species of concern, such as the Wilson's plover, the piping plover, and the American oyster catcher. So a wide variety of different species inhabit the Bahamas, inhabit the Caribbean during the winter period and year round. And some of them are species of concern. So we love to know that these birds are here and that they're thriving. Next slide. So why go birding? Why should you concern yourself with spending time looking for birds? Well, there are several good reasons. Next slide.
Yeah, if you want, people can put in the chat why you go birding. We would love to hear from you. What are some different reasons that you might want to go birding? Yeah, Gloria's saying it's relaxing.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Great way to relieve stress.
Mm-hmm. To enjoy seeing the many different species we have here, for sure. Great way to appreciate nature, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wanting to put a name to something that wakes you up in the morning. Yeah, I get that. Besides the roosters. Definitely, it's an educational tool for teaching kids about their local flora and fauna. Absolutely. Birds are a wonderful, wonderful springboard for learning about nature and science.
That's very, very true.
They bring me peace and joy. Oh, I'm loving this. We have a lot of converts already, Scott.
Let's keep it coming.
Okay, well, great. Excellent answers, you guys. And hopefully the people that haven't birded yet are getting excited when they see all these responses. So go ahead, Scott. How do we identify all these birds when so many of them look alike and there's so many of them? How do we get started?
So that is a good question. A lot of people, they would see birds and they're like, well, I just see this brown bird. I don't know how to describe it. So in this presentation, we're going to show you and give you some tools to help you identify these birds.
This is just a little quiz.
So this is another question. So how many birds do you think that you can identify? Just out of your head, how many birds can you say with some level of confidence that you know what this bird is?
7, 12, 10,
25,
25, wow. 8, 30, possibly 15, 36, 20. Okay.
All right.
Great. Yeah, nice. Very good. 15. Okay, excellent. 30, 20.
I'm loving these answers.
You guys are doing great already.
So here's a question. What type of bird do you think this is? Just looking at this silhouette. All right, I see people saying pelican. I see brown pelican, pelican. And you are correct. So just because you may not know what the species is, you can tell just by the shape of the bird in this silhouette that this is indeed a pelican. Now, some of you saying brown pelican, it's a pelican, definitely, but I would need a little bit more information to determine if this is a brown pelican or not. But that's a good answer. What about this one? Ooh, I see kingbird. I see woodpecker. I see kingbird. I see kingfisher. Okay.
Keep it coming. Woodpecker. Yeah, this one's a little more
And someone
challenging.
says, I'm not sure. Okay, that's good. Well, the answer would be a kingfisher. So by the silhouette, you could tell this bird, and we're going to go into a little bit more explanation of it, but that long straight beak and that short, stout little body is quite reminiscent of a kingfisher species.
The crest on the head too.
Yes.
Okay, I got a challenging one. Who knows this bird?
Oh, wow. This is a tough one.
Oh, yeah.
You say Elmo?
Oh,
that's funny.
okay.
But this is indeed Elmo. I'm sorry, listen to me. This is a Big Bird from Sesame Street. So for everybody who may be in my generation, which is an 80s kid or even before that, you would know about Sesame Street and Big Bird.
Yep. Easy to identify. He's orange.
He's orange, he's tall.
Yep.
That's a good one. Who knows who this is?
Oh, boy.
Wow, this is a tough one, Lisa.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Everybody
But I see everybody saying Tweety, and they are correct. You can see by that very big head, those short wings, and the big feet. This is definitely Tweety from Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes.
Yep. I think we all watched way too many cartoons.
And I'm going to give you a hint. This one goes, meet me. And it's always being chased by the coyote. And you guys are correct. It is the Roadrunner, another one of the Looney Tunes favorites. So yeah, you guys know birds. So I guess I need to finish my presentation right now because everybody seems to have an idea as to what to look for when it comes to birds, being able to identify them. So let's look at this silhouette of the various species of birds in the tree and on the fence and on the ground. Let's see. Let me choose one. Who knows what this one is? All right, that is correct. A lot of you saying duck, and that is true. So you hear that large flat bill is a good hallmark of the duck. It's basically in water and has this now stout body with a very large head. So yeah, good job.
Martha even identifies this as a mallard, Scott.
Wow, she is very good.
How about this one? Yep.
All right, I'm seeing owl for everything. Notice that they are correct. That stocky body with no neck. The tufts are on both sides of the head. They look like two little points. Yeah, this is indeed an owl.
Let's do one more. How about that one?
Oh, that's a good one. All right, let's look at it good. Plump little body. It's ground dwelling. I see some people saying ground dove. I see some people saying quail.
Pigeon. Those are all good answers.
Partridge. Okay. Okay. Well, it's great that you guys are saying, some people are saying pigeon, and there's some truth to that. So there are a lot of pigeons that are ground dwelling and they're chunky, plump little birds. This looks to me more like a bobwhite or a quail species. Short, pointed beak, plump body, almost like chicken-like shape. Yeah, this looks more like a quail.
Yeah,
like a bobwhite.
Yep. So I think you guys can see, just based on silhouettes, you can tell a lot about what type of bird it is, right? Just get it into the group. That's the first thing to do. Look at the size and the shape.
That is correct. And so many of us know birds. We may not know the technical name for it. So we may not know what a black-throated blue warbler is, or a thick-billed vireo or something like that. But a lot of different countries throughout the Caribbean, they have their own local name for these birds. So they know the bird, they just don't know the accepted common name for it. For example, in the Bahamas, the Bahama oriole was once called a coconut bird because of its behavior of nesting and hanging out in coconut trees. The bananaquit was known as, and still known as, the banana bird and the sugar bird. The yellow-crowned night heron in the Bahamas, we call them gallin. The turkey vulture in places like Jamaica, they call these John Crow. Smooth-bill ani, because it's an all black bird, we tend to call them crow. The gray kingbird in the Bahamas, we know them as fighter, or in some islands, picarili. And in Jamaica, they would call these birds picheri. The American redstart, Christmas bird, and the red-billed streamer tail would be called a doctor bird. And again, in the Bahamas, where I'm from, small birds, warblers, and vireos, we call them chimneys or chim-chim. So we know birds, we just don't know those technical terms and names for them. So why is learning about birds fun and important? Some people gave some very good answers, but other answers could be is that it helps us to learn about the changes in composition in a region throughout the year, of species composition throughout the year. So for example, the migrants. We would have a huge influx of migratory birds coming in during the fall and winter season, and then they leave during the spring. And then we see a dramatic decrease in bird population, the bird composition, species composition during the summer months. And then another way in which birding is good, is fun, is it also helps us to establish baseline and new species and changes in the range of species. For example, the shiny cowbird. The shiny cowbird came to the Bahamas and was traveling through the Caribbean since like the 1990s. And so what we're seeing is the expansion of the range of the shiny cowbird across the Caribbean. The glossy ibis in the Bahamas, for example, in the last 15 to 20 years, we've seen this bird population explode. And then I have some friends in Cuba who are saying that they're seeing more of the West Indian woodpecker than they did a few years ago. And so you're seeing these changes, and that just makes you wonder, well, what's happening? Why are these bird numbers going up? And for everybody who loves birds, we like when bird numbers go up, especially the native birds. Then you have other birds like the Eurasian collared dove, which is not native species, but you're seeing them spread throughout the Caribbean. And they spread from the Bahamas to North America, and from there they spread across the entire North American continent. Another reason why learning about birds is fun and important is it helps us to learn about threats to wildlife. So by studying birds and learning about what's happening with birds, you can learn how climate change is affecting them, how habitat destruction is affecting bird populations, whether it be endemic or native or migratory. So all of these things are what makes birding so interesting. Next slide. So when we're learning about birds, there are some key things that we want to be able to identify. When you see a bird, it's one thing to say, I saw this bird and it was black and white. And if you see a black and white bird and you try to go to somebody who is knowledgeable about birds and try to explain to them that you saw a black and white bird, they may ask questions like, okay, where did you see the black on the bird? Where did you see the white on the bird? And that helps us to identify what species it is. So there are many different parts of a bird that you can use to help identify them. So you can look at the bill and the bill shape, the throat, the breast. You could use the belly, the legs, what type of legs they have, the tail, wing, the rump. And I know some people may think the rump is the under tail coverts here, but it's actually the rump. The rump is above the above the tail. Then you have the wing bars. That's these stripes that you would see in the wings. You have the back of the bird, the nape, and you have the eye stripe. Many species have a prominent eye stripe, and then you have the crown. Okay, so when you are trying to describe a bird, if you get the opportunity to see a bird, try to observe it for a period of time and see where the characteristic markers would be. Does it have a prominent eye stripe? Does it have a black throat? Does it have a red throat? Does it have streaking on the belly, et cetera, et cetera? And that will help to identify what species it is. There are four major keys to identifying birds, four major ways which you can identify birds. One is the size and the shape of the bird. Another is the color and field marks of the bird. The other would be the type of habitat that the bird lives in, the range and the distribution of the species, and the sound of the bird. So this is a bit more advanced. So we're mostly going to focus just on these top four, which is size and shape, color and field marks, habitat, and range. But sound is a very important tool used for studying, for learning about birds.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, and we want you guys to be successful. So it's important that you keep those four, you use multiple clues to identify a bird, you know, the
Yes.
four keys, keep those in mind.
Yes. So let's look at the size and shape. Many of us are familiar with several of these species of birds. You have the bananaquid, you have the common ground dove. And so let's look at the bananaquid. If you look at the bananaquid and you know what a bananaquid is, you know that it's a small bird. So size is a small bird. Its beak is short, pointy, and slightly curved. It has a prominent eyebrow shape, but we ain't talking about that. Just look at the size and shape. So small bird, short pointed bill, short legs, and short tail. Okay. Then we look at things like a common ground dove, birds like common ground dove. They also have a short beak, plump bodies with short, stout legs. And then you have the gray kingbird. The gray kingbird is has a large, broad bill, and this bill is an indicator that this bird catches prey on the wing. So it is a bird. It is being a flycatcher. It does go and it catches its prey while flying, usually. Okay. Then you look at birds like the mangrove cuckoo, long tail, curved bill, kind of slender type body shape. And then you have a common gallinule, which is like a plump, kind of stout chicken-like body with a relatively long neck and a short pointy bill. So these are all characteristics that you can look at. And when you look at things like raptors, you look at that hooked bill, the talons in the feet, and the stocky shape of the raptor. So all of these helps you to identify what these species are. And of course, the size and shape of herons and egrets. This is a pretty easy one to describe. Long bill, long neck, long legs, and kind of slender to robust type body shape.
Yeah, that's great, Scott. Also, what's really important is to try to learn a few common species really well, and then use that as like a marker bird that you can compare other birds to. So then you can say, well, I saw this bird today, I didn't recognize it, but I know it was bigger than a gray kingbird, you know, so that's going to help you identify it. Or you can say, I saw a huge bird soaring in the sky. It looked like about the size of an osprey. So if you can identify birds that you're familiar with, then you can say it was bigger than this or it was smaller than that, and that can help you to narrow down what possible species it could be.
Yeah. Thank you, Lucy. So going back to the silhouettes, let's look at one or two birds before we move to the next slide. How about this one?
Which one?
I'm looking at the one with the long tail, the hooked bill, and the slender body shape.
This one?
There you go. Glad to know that you could identify the bird. All right. So if you look at this bird, what kind of species would you say this is?
Oh, they're already putting it in the chat. That's excellent. Some
Wow.
kind of a parrot.
Somebody said parrot and somebody said macaw.
Yeah.
Look at you. Awesome. Awesome. But yeah, this is a parrot. This is indeed a type of macaw. What about the one to the lower right?
This one?
That one. Plump body, stout legs, short beak. Yeah, it's a pigeon or a dove. So you can identify these birds again just by the size and the shape. You may not know what the species is. That comes a little bit later. But one of the first things you want to do when you see a bird is try to identify that size and shape of the species or of the individual. Okay. And then when we look at shorebirds, they come in a variety of different sizes and shapes. Some are very large and some of them are very, very small, like these sandpipers here at the top here. And then you have the herons and egrets, which are pretty much some of the largest wetland birds that you would see, or shorebirds that you would see. Then you have the doves. And you would have birds like the raptors, peregrine falcon being an example. And you look at the size and the shape of it. You see how the peregrine falcon and many other raptors, they don't really have a long neck and they have more of an upright posture. These are birds that are looking around for prey. So you want to stand kind of erect when you're looking up and you are perched very high up. So you're erect, you're looking down on prey and you're checking to see who's going to be my next victim. Okay. The shape of a bird's bill can also tell you a lot about the foraging behavior of a species. So if you look at a yellow warbler, they have a short pointed bill. So you could be able to say that this species feeds primarily on insects. And then you have the black-faced grass squid, which has this more conical triangular type bill. And this feeds more on seeds and grain. The hooked bill of the American kestrel is built for tearing flesh. Okay. Then you have these, then you have the long probing bill. This is great for probing in the sediment for invertebrates. Then you have others like the ducks, which has a broad flat bill. And again, with the herons, the long straight bill for basically harpooning fish or other animals.
Scott?
Yes.
We have a question from Sanya Compton. She's asking if the shape of the bill, if that makes an owl a bird of prey. Yes.
So there are key characteristics of a raptor that makes a bird of prey a bird of prey. Now I must make a disclaimer. I must make a disclaimer. There are a lot of birds that do not have those characteristics. For example, a great egret. A great blue heron is a bird that feeds almost exclusively on other animals. So it is a bird of prey. But the characteristics for defining a bird of prey would be a hooked bill, large raptorial claws, stout body, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yes, an owl is considered a bird of prey. Okay, that's a good question. So water birds, like I was saying, water birds have bills that act like spears. So you look at that great blue heron. That's perfect for spearing fish or other small animals. And then you have other birds like flamingos. They have this very strange shaped bill, and that's perfectly designed for filtering water for invertebrates. And then you have other birds like the pelican, which uses its bill for catching and holding fish like a net. And then when you look at their feet, herons and egrets, they tend to have these wading feet, 3 toes just separated. And then other species like the ducks, they would have more webbed feet, perfect for swimming in water. Okay, So this just gives you some examples of some of the herons and egrets that you may see throughout the Caribbean. And just remember, if we're looking at size and shape, just look at the shapes of these birds. These are great examples of, or easy examples of birds that you can identify. Long neck, long bill, long legs. Okay, and then when you want to look for other things, then we could go more in depth with it. And then you look at the shape of the wings, because the wings can tell you a lot about the locomotion of these birds. For example, magnificent frigate birds are known for their ability to soar for long distances. And for a long distance flight, like the royal terns, if you're a bird that likes to soar, you have the broad wings like a red-tailed hawk. And then you also look at birds that have special tail feathers that look like streamers. Yeah. These tail feathers are useful for courtship. And so the wings of a bird can tell you a lot about the locomotion of the species.
Great. Thanks, Scott. All right. So I'm going to talk about color and field marks. Hold on 1 second. All right. So identifying birds can be challenging. Often they're moving around a lot, especially songbirds and warblers. They're jumping from branch to branch. They're hidden by vegetation. They don't hold still. So you do have to be patient and just keep trying to spot them and look for what we call field marks. And these are distinctive patches of color, especially on the face, the neck, the rump, the tail, and the wings. And then also look at the legs, the color on the legs and the bill. All right, so just take a look at these birds here. Field marks. What field marks stand out on these birds, would you say? How about this one? Just type in the chat. How would you describe this bird? Okay, if I was looking at it, I would say, okay, it's blue-gray on the back, it's white on the throat, and it has a black throat. And it's got a delicate bill. It looks like a warbler kind of a bird.
Right, and it also has a little white patch in the wing.
Ah, yes. Good eye on that one.
Quite a few people have pinned on that it has a white underbelly.
Yes, white underbelly and white patch on the wing. I like to call it a handkerchief. Okay, this bird here, what stands out on this one? The yellow throat, yep. Anything else? The black mask for sure. Black area around the eye, excellent. Good job. Okay, this one looks like it's kind of similar to this one. It's got a small, delicate beak like this one. It's probably another warbler. And how about this guy? What stands out on this one? Yep, red and yellow on the wing. Yep, it's an all black bird, but certainly that red patch on the wing, red and yellow patch stands out.
So if I may ask another question, if you look at these three birds, do you think that this bird here, do you think that the last bird is in the same group as the same family as this bird here, the other two? If you look at both of the birds carefully. For example, look at the bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good, Scott. I think you could say, all right, yeah, these two look similar, same body shape, bill shape. They're probably warblers, but what about this one? No, it's different. The bill shape is definitely different. It's heavier, it's longer. Body shape is different. So yeah, that's what birding is all about, is picking out what looks different about birds and then going from there. All right, so this one has a nice name, black-throated blue warbler. That's very helpful for remembering the bird and the name. This one with the mask, which looks like a bandit, that's a common yellowthroat. That's a pretty easy one to identify. It's a pretty striking, distinctive field marks. And then this one is very common in marshes. Red-winged blackbird, you're probably very familiar with this one in a number of islands. This bird will be singing and setting up territories in the spring. Okay, here's several more. What can you see on field marks for this bird? How would you describe it? What do you notice about this bird? You're looking at it through your binoculars and you're saying, this is a new one. I've never seen it before. How would I describe it? Yeah, it's got striping on the chest, on the breast and the belly. Lots of striping. Yeah.
I like the mint chocolate chip remark.
Love that.
Wow.
Very striped underbelly. Yep. And it's got this eye stripe. It's got the stripe going through the eye, and then it's got a white stripe over the eye. So it's like a white eyebrow stripe, a eye line stripe. It's got a brown crown. The back is brown. Good job, you guys. All right. How about this one? If you saw this dove and you would, well, I gave it away, but I guess it's pretty obvious. It is a dove. If you saw this bird, what would you say are the field marks on this bird? What stands out to you? Yeah, there are some spots on the wings. Black wingtips, yes, for sure. Spots on the wings. It also has a couple spots on the neck here, and it doesn't show up really well, but there is some purplish pink iridescence on the back of the neck that's very pretty. And it also has this white patch on the wings, and it has pink legs. Good job, you guys. And then finally, this one. What do you notice about this one? What would you say are the field marks on this bird? Yellow throat. Yep. Somebody said
Let's look at the wings.
Yeah, how about the wings? Okay, so you would say white wing bars, 2 white wing bars on this bird. Some birds have wing bars and some don't. So this is a good field mark to look for on these small birds. The overall color is kind of a blue-gray, overall blue with a white belly.
Okay.
How about the eyes? Yeah, somebody pointed out the white patches on the top and bottom of the eye. You might call that a broken eye ring. That's another way to describe it. It's a white spot above and below the eye. That's very distinctive. And then also it has this kind of olive green patch on its upper back, maybe a little bit lower on the back than the nape. So that's also very distinctive. All right, good job. So that's what birding is all about, is just looking at the bird and picking out the field marks, noticing what are the key field marks, and then you can start looking through your field guide or your birding apps and identifying the birds. So we've got a northern water thrush as a native dove and a northern parula. And these two are both migratory warblers, and this is a resident dove in many islands in the Caribbean. Okay, fortunately, some birds are really easy to identify. I love these. These are one of my favorite birds. When I taught a birding class in the Bahamas a long time ago in Inagua, Scott, somebody called this bird the tuxedo bird.
I can see why. I can definitely see why.
But oh man, those long pink legs. I'm jealous. I wish I had long legs like that. And then this bird, the American oyster catcher, that's a very distinctive bird. You're not going to see any other bird at the beach that looks like this. It's got this very long, heavy orange bill, black head and upper chest, and the white belly and pink legs. Very distinctive bird. So if you see a bird like that, it's not going to be too hard to find that one in your field guide and figure out what it is. Okay, here's one that's a bit more challenging. I think just based on its body size and shape, what group of birds do you think this falls in? First, figure that out. And also look at the habitat. It's in a wetland. You can see this is mangroves. It's in shallow water. So don't say the species if you know what it is, but just tell me what group of birds it's in. Okay, herons, that's a guess. But think back to our herons and egrets. They had really long legs and necks. Okay, ducks, though, ducks have flattened bills. Look at this bill. It's long and straight and pointy. It's a little bit hard to tell. Martha, good guess. Yeah, I would say shorebird. I would say shorebird. Shorebirds do come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, but based on the habitat and the body shape and the long bill, which is good for probing in the sand and the mud, I would say it's some kind of a shorebird. Plovers tend to be small and, well, more rounded. But yeah, plover is a kind of a shorebird. Okay, so if you're birding, you're out and you see this bird, oh my gosh, what are the field marks? Gee whiz, it doesn't look like much. It's just kind of a grayish brown bird. I do see that it has a long, straight bill. With my binoculars, I'd be able to see that it was a pretty slender bill. It's not flat or anything. So, okay, I'm going to identify it as some kind of a shorebird. And then all of a sudden, while I'm watching it, it takes off. And look at that. Look at that black and white pattern on the wing. Okay, that immediately tells me that it's a willet. Okay, there's no other medium to large size shorebird that's plain brown in the wintertime that has a black and white pattern on it. So as you learn birds, you'll start to find these little things about each species that help you to remember what they are. And so this is a good field mark for the willet. If you're not sure what it is, you're kind of stumped. Sometimes if a bird flies, all of a sudden you'll see something on it, or it will call, and you'll recognize the call.
That's right. Yeah, it does look similar to yellow.
Yeah, legs. A bit. The yellow legs, of course, do have bright yellow legs. So when it flew, you would be able to see, oh yeah, you can't see the leg color here, but here you would see, oh, they're not yellow. So it's definitely not a yellow legs.
Yep.
And the yellow legs bill tends to be thinner and finer. And so yeah, subtle differences. Shorebirds are the hardest group to identify, but they're also a lot of fun. All right, so now we're going to talk about habitat. Back over to you, Scott.
Okay. So throughout the Caribbean, you have a lot of different habitats that birds utilize. And so knowing the habitat that you are in is going to help you a lot with your ability to identify different species. In parts of the Caribbean, we have pinelands, pine forests, like in the Bahamas, in Cuba, the DR, and Puerto Rico. You have some pinelands, and then I think everybody knows that everybody has seashores across the Caribbean. Some islands have clouded forests, and most islands in the Caribbean have agricultural land, raising livestock, goat and sheep, very big across the region. Then you have wetlands and the salt flats. All of these different habitats can host different species of birds. Next slide. And your yard can actually be a great place, is a great habitat for birds as well. I know that in places like the Retreat Gardens in New Providence, that national park has a wealth of different plants and different environments that favor many different species of birds. In fact, the retreat is possibly one of the best places on New Providence where you could see a variety of different species of birds. And birds love gardens. They love the different habitat types that you could find in gardens, and your yard can be a perfect place to do birding. So if you're not big on going out and visiting the forest and stuff like that, you can just sit outside and look at your fruit trees and look at what bird comes in. And don't forget to go and add that and put that in eBird. But we'll talk about it later. Next slide. as is our custom at Birds Caribbean, we encourage everybody when they are taking care of their yards and their lawns and everything else, they want to plant native. When you plant native trees, you help birds out a lot more than when you plant a bunch of exotics. Exotic plants can be detrimental to the ecosystems, to the environment. But when you plant native trees, you don't have to spend as much time trying to take care of them because they are adapted to the environment that they are in. And they produce lots of native fruits and flowers that birds love. So planting native is great for trying to increase bird diversity in your area. Next slide. If you are somebody who loves nectarivores, which are birds that like to eat nectar and pollen from flowers, then looking at the types of flowers that you put in your yard is important. Hummingbirds, for example, they like bright colored flowers with elongated flower pistils. So with the inflorescence is long, they love the long, bright colored inflorescence on trees and plants. And so if you want to plant any type of flowers to attract birds, you want to look for species like that. And so you have plants like Morning Glory. Then you have this one's called Blue Flower, Stachytorpheida jamaicensis. You have species like Strongback. This is Borreria succulenta. And you have this pencil. What is this called? Pencil. I can't see the bottom of my slide. But anyhow, this same plant here also has small flowers that are attractive to hummingbirds. And then for other nectarivores who like to feed on fruit, planting, like I was mentioning, planting native fruit trees and fruit trees are extremely important to helping birds out, especially during the dry season. Okay, next slide. If you're not somebody with a green thumb, you could still help birds out by setting up bird feeders, bird feeding stations in your yard. These are great ways to attract many species of birds to your yard. And sometimes you may see a species that you didn't think that you would see in your yard. And if you don't want to set up a bird feeding station, you could just get some fruit like oranges, citrus fruits, and you could just stick them in trees, and that can also attract birds. I know blackbirds, orioles, they tend to like citrus fruits as well as grape jelly. And then you have the hummingbirds, the hummingbird feeders, which you would make a sugar solution, which I would encourage. I think it's 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. You don't want to use brown sugar or use dyes and stuff like that when you're making the sugar solution to attract these birds. And you want to make sure that you clean the feeders, whether it be sugar solution or grain foodstuffs. You want to clean those out regularly because you don't want the birds that you're attracting to get sick. Okay. Water features are extremely important, especially during the heat of the summer and in places where you may have droughts, dry spells for long periods of time. Having a shallow dish set up in various locations in your yard can help birds out tremendously. Some people have even taken the liberty of making their own man-made ponds, which is a wonderful idea if your budget can afford it. But you don't have to do something so dramatic and quote expensive unquote. You could just go and set up a shallow dish in your yard, and you don't want the dish to be deep at all because birds can drown in the dish that you may have set up to help the birds out. So you want a nice shallow dish, regularly cleaned, filled with water, and that can help thirsty and hot birds out tremendously. Next slide. And when you're looking at a habitat, you also want to be mindful that there are some species of birds that are found in only a particular habitat. And so if you're a birder and you're excited about going to visit these various locations, it's good to do a little bit of research just to determine if a particular species is found only on this island, and if they're found only on that island in particular places within the island. For example, this bird here to the far left, that is a Bahama warbler, and that is a habitat specialist. It's found only in the pinelands of Abaco and Grand Bahama in the northern Bahamas. And then you have other species that are habitat specialists, such as the olive-capped warbler, the bird in the center, that also frequents the pinelands. That is what I would call or what some people would call a microhabitat specialist, because it's found in forests in the Bahamas, snowberry fruits. And so even though this bird is found throughout the Bahamas, those are key things that you want to keep in mind when you're going birding. Is this habitat?
Scott, not sure what's happening, but we're losing you. Maybe try turning off your video.
Okay.
Yeah, you're kind of cutting in and out of it all of a sudden.
Okay, can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Where did
Oh, you're still.
where was I? Where were you all struggling to hear me?
Yeah, you were cutting out when you started talking about the olive cap warbler. Maybe repeat that quickly.
Okay, so the olive cap warbler, like the Bahama warbler,
Oh shoot, we're still losing you.
habitat specialist. It is a pine species. You'll only find this bird in. What's happening?
Yeah, I don't know why. All of a
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're just kind of coming in and out. It's very strange. I don't know why that's happening all of a sudden.
Okay. So I guess I will try and make this short. Olive cap warblers.
Go ahead.
Habitat specialist found only in pine. The Kirtland's warbler is what you would consider, will be considered to be a microhabitat specialist, because it likes scrubby coppice forest, which is broadleaf forest in the but it's okay. Hello?
Yeah, we're still losing you. I don't know why. I'm going to stop your video and then maybe just go on to the third bird and let's hope for the best.
Okay, can everybody hear me now? Hello?
We can, Scott, but it's going and coming a bit.
Oh, okay. Please. But the last bird is the Kirtland's warbler, and it is a microlist in the Bahamas. It prefers plants such as white snowberry, and a lot of those species during the winter season. Chances are you may be able to see this bird. Okay. Next slide. And this bird
Okay, Scott, I don't know what's happening.
An Audubon shearwater. Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, we hear you for a sentence and then you disappear and then you come back again. All right. Well,
okay. Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah, you come
Testing,
back,
one,
but then you
two.
cut out again. Try one more time with the shearwater.
Okay. So this is Audubon shearwater. This is one of those birds that you may not see frequently because it is a pelagic species, which means it tends to spend a lot of its time over water. And it comes in at night and it roosts and nests in rocky outcrops on family islands and keys throughout the Bahamas and a few other places. So this bird is going to be would be hard to spot from on a regular day. But just look at some characteristics of the bird. Remember it has a long, narrow bill, a grayish black upper body, white belly, and white throat. But just give you some characteristics. And it likes sandy habitat, rocky habitat along the rocky shore. Okay. So the habitat and range, there's a lot of species of birds. As a birder, you're gonna it's good to learn about the range of species because you may see something that is totally different, that is totally out of its range. Like if you look at this, the species of heron, this heron, a lot of people would say, hey, I saw this heron in my yard, or I saw this heron in a different place. And somebody else may say, well, okay, that's wonderful. Can you describe this bird? And you go and you describe the bird. And you may be looking at something that may be totally different. So this is I believe this is a striated heron, correct, Lisa?
Yes.
Yes. So this is a striated heron, and this is a green heron. So sometimes people would say that they see a particular heron and they may misidentify the species. And this is why knowing the range of the bird and knowing the characteristics of the bird, such as the color pattern and the habitat type and the range, is important to help you identify these species.
Scott, before you move on, we had a question from Marcia Musgrove that now may be a good time to ask. She's asking, what's the difference between a heron and an egret?
Oh boy. Oh, wow. So that is a great question. I struggle to answer that question as well, the same way how I struggle to answer the question of what is the difference between a pigeon and a dove. So I don't know, maybe Lisa, maybe you have a bit more insight on this question that you could answer.
Sure. So yeah, herons and egrets and bitterns are all in the family Ardeidae. So they all are closely related. I don't think that like genetically or morphologically that there's anything inherently different between herons and egrets. It's more of kind of like a naming tradition. Egrets are mostly white and herons are other colors. From what I've read, that's the only difference between them. The other difference might be that I think herons typically fly with their kinked neck, whereas egrets might fly with a straighter neck. So technically there's no real difference between them. I think it's more just a historical naming tradition. You know, we have great egrets, snowy egrets, cattle egrets, you know, those are all white. And then the herons tend to be more colors like little blue heron and tricolored heron and yellow-crowned night heron and black-crowned night heron. So I think that I don't think there's a real difference between them. It's just kind of a historical difference in naming them. I hope that helps.
I
All right.
Thanks, guys. Marcia said thank you as well.
Yeah,
great.
So if we look at the range of the striated heron, you would see that it is found in a few places in the Caribbean, but it is found predominantly throughout South America and parts of Central America. And so if you're in Cuba and you see this bird, you definitely want to keep a record of it. Remember to identify the key characteristics of the species and take some decent photos, because ain't nobody gonna believe you.
All right. Okay. So now we're on to the fourth key to bird ID, behavior. And this one is a lot of fun because birds not only have amazing colors and adaptations in the way they feed, but also in the way they move. So you want to look at what is the bird's posture? Is it upright or is it more horizontal? How does the bird move when it flies? Does it glide? Does it flap its wings a lot? Quickly, slowly? Does it soar in the air like a frigate bird or a hawk? Or does it hover like a hummingbird? Or maybe like an American kestrel when it's hunting? Okay, so you want to, when you're observing the bird, not only look for field marks, but pay attention to the behavior. How is the bird moving in the habitat? Okay, you also want to look at where is it located in the habitat? It might be way high up in the trees, high in the tree canopy. And when we're out birding and we're looking at warblers, especially during migration, we're out there with our binoculars and we're looking up like this to the treetops for sometimes it can feel like hours. And there's such a thing called warbler neck, where you are actually in pain because you've been looking up so much. So that's pretty typical for warblers to be up in the canopy. Other birds might be low on the lower branches or in the shrubs, which is helpful. You also want to look at how it feeds. Is it gleaning insects off of the branches in the trees? Is it dancing around like a reddish egret, trying to catch a fish, or is it stalking like a great blue heron? If you're looking at shorebirds, the feeding method is really, really helpful in identifying the bird. Is it plunging up and down like an oil derrick, or is it running around and stopping and running and stopping and running and stopping? That would be more characteristic of a plover. So looking at the behavior can be super, super helpful with also figuring out what kind of bird you have. So pay attention to that as well. Okay, and I have one example here to show you of a short video. Okay, you can hear it calling. It's a spotted sandpiper. It's a kind of a shorebird, and when it's in its breeding plumage, it has these spots on its breast.
Do you see the eyebrow stripe and the slight tip in the
Yep.
black tip in the tail, in the bill?
Okay, so this shorebird does this almost constant tail bobbing. It's a twerking bird. So if you see a shorebird that looks like this and its tail is bobbing up and down, for sure you can say this is a spotted sandpiper. Okay. The other interesting thing about this bird is the way it flies. It will take short flights and do a very choppy flying motion, with very quick wing beats. Beat its wings quickly, stop, beat its wings quickly and stop. So just the movements of this bird, you can identify it without even knowing what size or color it is. Oh, and look, and here's a chick, and it's also bobbing. That is so cute. Already at that young age, it's already got that bobbing behavior. All right, so everybody got that? Spotted sandpiper. Piece of cake to identify, even though it's a pretty plain shorebird.
AKA the twerking bird.
Yes. Even though I forgot to include a picture of the spotted sandpiper non-breeding season, it's a very plain shorebird in the non-breeding season, but again, it will still be doing that bobbing behavior. So that's very helpful. Okay. Anybody know what bird this is? Okay, so as Scott was saying, the fifth key to bird ID is sound, and that can be a bit more challenging to learn. So, it's something that you should start on right away. Some of the birds are really easy to figure out. Others are much more challenging. But when you go out birding, as you get good at birding, as you get to know the sounds, you can bird simply by sound. You can walk down a trail and not even see the bird because it's hidden in the bushes, but you can be calling out the birds just based on their songs and calls. So again, learning sound is another clue to what the bird might be. So did anybody know what the song was of that bird? What bird that was? Okay, well, it's very distinctive, right? It's a whistling call. That is a West Indian whistling duck. And this is a threatened endemic regional duck that occurs on a few islands, mostly in the Greater Antilles, all the way down to Antigua. And it is a threatened duck. The males and females look alike. They are mostly what we call crepuscular. They're active at dawn and dusk. And after the sun sets, the birds will start flying around, giving that beautiful haunting whistling call. So once you hear that, you will never forget that species. Okay, here's one more for you that some of you may recognize.
So this bird recently came to the Bahamas in April, and it is one of our migrants.
Yes.
Summer migrants or spring migrants.
Summer migrant, meaning that it comes back to the Bahamas from further south to breed in the summer. Most migratory birds that breed in the north, and they come down south for the winter, and then they head north again. This one comes north to breed. Anybody know this bird? Do you recognize the call?
Oh, John Chewett.
Ah, very good, Emma. Okay, so this is a black whiskered vireo. Its nickname is John Chewett in Jamaica because the sound it makes sounds like that. It sounds like it's saying, sweet John Chewett, John Chewett, sweet John Chewett. And this bird, when it comes back in the summer, if you're out and hiking or walking through forests, you can hear this all day long. It can start to drive you crazy after a while because it's very loud. But that's another bird where you learn the call and it's pretty easy to learn. And yeah, you can identify it without even seeing it. So just like learning field marks, start to pay attention to the songs and calls. Yes, it is the sound of summer for sure in the many Caribbean islands. Just start paying attention to the calls too. When you're birding, what you want to do is look for movement, listen for sounds, and then you can spot the birds and start to look at them through your binoculars and identify them. So birding by sight and sound. Okay, and so we'll talk a little bit about equipment. The basic birding equipment for a birder is binoculars. We recommend 7x35s or 8x42s. 7 refers to the power, and 7 or 8, this first number refers to the power, the magnification of the binoculars. I think 7 or 8 is perfect for most birding. If you get 10s, that's gonna bring the birds closer, but you will also, with 10s, have a more narrow field of view, and it's harder to hold the binoculars steady because there's stronger power. So you might get more shake, and the birds might not be as clear. So I think 7x35s or 8x42s are perfect. If you can get some waterproof nitrogen purge binoculars, this means that they've been sealed, so they're not going to be susceptible to humidity and getting a lot of mold growing inside them with humidity. If you drop them in the water and get them wet in the rain, having waterproof is really great, of course. Our advice would be to buy the best binoculars that you can afford. And I think you can get a really, really good pair of binoculars for $100, $150. If you want to message one of us afterwards, we can give you some specific models that you can look at. There's lots of models out there, lots of really good binoculars. Some models that we like are Vortex, Nikon, and Bushnell. And I would say if money is no object, then go for Swarovski or Lights.
Oh boy.
But those are going to cost you probably around $2,000. So
yes.
It's a good investment, and you know, if you make a good living, go for it. And then just very quickly, when you have a pair of binoculars, you're going to want to adjust them to your eyes by twisting them this way so that they match your eyes. If you wear eyeglasses, you're going to roll the eye cups down. If you don't, you just leave them up. And then the main focusing is usually on the center ring. And usually when you're going birding, what you want to do is spot the bird first with your naked eye. You might see it sitting on a branch or on a fence. Spot the bird first with your eye and keep looking at the bird, and then bring the binoculars up to your eyes and the bird should be there, right? You don't want to be going like this and trying to find the bird. Usually that's pretty difficult to do. So spot the bird first and then keep looking at it and bring the binoculars up and the bird will be there. So those are just a couple quick tips. The other piece of equipment that we recommend is having some kind of a camera with you in the field, because
super important.
Super important. You may see something really rare or unusual, but if you're going to claim that you saw something rare, you better have a picture of it, because otherwise it won't be counted as a record unless you have a picture of it. So even a phone camera can get a good picture sometimes, or a good enough picture. And then also taking pictures is great if you see birds that you're not sure what they are. You know, you can share them with your friends. Send them to me or Scott or to some of your other birding friends and say, hey, I saw this bird. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's a dove, but is it this dove or is it this dove? You know, you try to figure it out, but if you need help, there's lots of people in birding communities that will help you. We have a listserv, we have WhatsApp groups, things like that for birding. Okay, and sometimes people ask us about binoculars for kids. You can buy lighter and smaller binoculars for kids. It can be helpful, but I think they do just as well with standard binoculars too. They are really pick up birding right away. They have really good eyes and really good ears. And before you know it, they're spotting all the birds and identifying them for you. So it's great to get kids involved in birding. They just love it. And another piece of equipment that you can get as you advance with your birding eventually is a spotting scope and tripod. And this will let you bring birds in with magnification powers of say 20 times to 60 times. They have zoom lenses on them. And so especially for water birds or birds that are going to like, they're often off in the distance or that you really want to see the details on, like shorebirds, having a scope can be really, really helpful. This is a 4-year-old boy who's handling the scope just like a pro. This was in Freeport, Grand Bahama, picture by Erica Gates. All right, the next thing that you're going to need is field guides. And there are a lot of great ones out there. I would say what's really helpful is to get one for the whole region. Birds of the West Indies is one of my favorites. It's by Herb Raphael. The second edition just came out a couple of years ago. It's a paperback book. There's also one by Guy Kirkconnell that called Birds of the West Indies. This one has a lot of photographs in it. And that one is also very nice. And then most islands have their own field guides. So check around, check with me, but you know, there's field guides for the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, the Grenadines, the Bahamas. You know, there are local field guides for many, many islands. So there's lots of resources out there. And what I do is I collect field guides. Every time I go to a new island, I have to get the field guide, of course, and I have several shelves in my office just filled with bird field guides. And I love just looking through them and making notes in them, studying them. You know, different field guides have different advice, different photos, different things that they point out. So it's really, really a lot of fun to study those field guides and really get to know your birds.
And it's also great to see how a bird may change or be elevated to a new species or something like that from a previous bird field guide. So.
Yes, that's true. Over time, as scientists study birds, they discover that some are more closely related, and so they might lump two species together, or they might decide that two similar species on different islands are actually should be designated as separate species. So then you get a new bird on your checklist. So Scott has already mentioned this a couple of times, and hopefully you've heard of this, but there's some really, really great birding apps out there that you should get. The two, I would say, most important ones are eBird and Merlin. So this is what eBird looks like. And what it is an online mobile app, which lets you record all the birds that you see on your phone. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to have paper and pencil to write down what you're seeing in the field. You can record your checklist every time you go birding. And it makes it really, really easy to do. You just press start. It has a GPS in it, so it knows where you are. You walk down your trail or you stand in one place, maybe you're visiting a wetland, you do your count, you enter the birds that you see, and then you submit your checklist. And then now you've are not only keeping your own record, your own life list of the birds that you've seen, and you can grow that over time, but you're also contributing to science because now you're adding your sightings to the rest of the community. And there's people that are on using eBird all over the world. So it's like a crowdsourced data where you can go on and just see based on everybody's observations that has been out birding. You can learn so much about birds and where they are just from this eBird mobile app.
And just a quick note, a special shout out to everybody who has participated in putting in data in this eBird app. With that information that you got from whether you think that you are a novice bird or not, that information has helped ornithologists, conservationists, everybody learned so much about the range and what's happening, the decline of species, the increase of species populations and stuff like that. So this is one of the best citizen science programs out there. So good job to everybody who has participated.
Yeah, eBird is amazing with all the data that's been entered over the last, 15 years or so. We're now able to see migrations of birds throughout the calendar year. You can see birds, the sightings move down the map, down the globe in the fall and back up again in the spring. I mean, it's just, you should just go on the website and check it out. And if you're in the Caribbean, we recommend highly that you use the eBird Caribbean portal. We have our own portal where we can have news articles and Caribbean birds will pop up here on the homepage. The advantage of this is that we have our own protocols for doing some kinds of counts. And so if you're at a wetland, we want you to do a Caribbean waterbird census count and choose that protocol. It could be a point count, or stationary count, which is just essentially standing in one place and recording all the birds you see, or it could be a traveling count where you're walking, maybe down a dike or down a beach, something like that. So also with eBird Caribbean, you're going to see all the Caribbean species that come up in the mobile app. You need to set up your app for the Caribbean. And we actually have a whole webinar on how to use eBird. If you go to our YouTube channel, BirdsCaribbean YouTube channel, there's an eBird and Merlin tutorial. And then Cornell Lab of Ornithology also has excellent tutorials. So if you're new to eBird, we don't have time to get into that today. I definitely recommend that you take a couple of those tutorials. It's easy to use, but it's helpful to take those introductory little videos. Okay, another really, really helpful app that's getting more and more powerful all the time is called Merlin. This one is also published by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And this app can help you identify the birds that you're seeing in the field in real time. So what if you're outside and you see a bird and you don't know what it is? You can answer 5 questions in this app and it will take a guess as to what bird it is based on your answer to those 5 questions. So you're going to answer what size was the bird. You're going to estimate the size, just like we've been talking about. You're going to say what were the main colors on the bird. You're going to say what the bird was doing. Things like on the ground, in the trees, in the fence or wing, things like that, soaring or flying. And then there's a couple more questions, I think, about the date of your observation. And then it's going to bring up some pictures. It's going to say, is this your bird? And 80 to 90% of the time, it's correct. And if it's not the first bird on the list, it's the second or third or fourth one down. So it's really a phenomenal app, and it can do all kinds of things, like bring up the birds around you. The calls are on there. It also has what I like to call Shazam for birds. You can do sound ID. You click a button and you hear the bird calling, and it will tell you what bird is calling. Now, that's not 100% accurate. You can't rely on it completely, but often for the most common birds, it's very accurate. And it can give you a clue. So Scott, if you haven't checked that out yet, check out Merlin Sound ID. It's amazing. And again, it's started in North America, so it's going to focus on the North American species. But of course, we have many of the migrants in the Caribbean, so many of the photos and the sounds will work perfectly well. But they're growing all the time, so they're going to just keep expanding the library. So really, just phenomenal resources. All right, we also produce lots of bird ID materials. We make these plastic waterproof bird ID cards. We've done We've done them for a number of different islands. We have a general one for wetland birds and seabirds. We have lots of great resources on how to identify shorebirds. We've got this poster. This is available for free download on our website under the resources tab, shorebird resources. If you want to get into learning about shorebirds and waterbirds, last year for Global Big Day, or for the Caribbean Waterbird Census, we did a whole webinar on herons, egrets, ducks, marsh birds, and seabirds. Highly recommend that you look that up on our YouTube channel. And then a whole webinar just on shorebirds, our favorite birds. It's a group of birds that used to terrify me, but now I feel more comfortable. They're still challenging, but I feel more comfortable after spending many hours in the field looking at them, but they're really a lot of fun. All right, and a couple last tips. When you're out birding, we recommend that you observe the bird as much as possible. You know, there might be a temptation to see a bird, look at it and say, okay, yeah. And then right away start looking down at your field guide and trying to figure out what it is. And then you might say, oh, I didn't see what color its legs were. Let me check what they were. And the bird is gone. Okay, so you need to just really look at it while it's there. Make mental notes of all the field marks like we've been talking about. Then put your binoculars down and try to figure out what it is. You know, watch its behavior, all the colors, all the field marks, and then figure out what it is, so that you definitely have it before the bird disappears. And try to get a picture of it too, if you're not sure what it is. Okay, and then like with anything else, it takes practice. To become a really good birder takes many hours in the field. Wouldn't you say, Scott? Probably years.
Agreed. Yeah. It takes years, especially if you want to learn that by sound.
Yep. So, you know, don't get discouraged. You're going to just gradually build your skills over time. You know, every time you go out, you're going to learn more and you're going to be better. And all of a sudden you'll just realize, hey, I'm a birder, you know, like I can do this, you know, which is really fun and a really good feeling. So don't give up, just keep practicing, go out whenever you can. And with practice, you'll get good at it. We do encourage you to either use the eBird app. You can also take notes in a field notebook. That can be helpful for remembering the birds that you see. If you like to draw or sketch, drawing your bird or sketching your bird can help you remember it as well. And the most important thing is to have fun. You know, you can go out by yourself. If you need some solitude, you can go out with your friends, with your family. Birding is a lot of fun, and don't feel like you have to be an expert. You know, just go out there with everybody else and figure out what the birds are. Even if you're leading a field trip, you don't have to be an expert. You can work together to figure out what the birds are. All right, we've been going on for a long time, but here's the summary. Assemble your gear, download your eBird and Merlin apps and become familiar with them and learn how to use them. Definitely study take the YouTube videos or read up on them online. Go birding as often as possible, you know, just in your backyard, in your park down the street. Carry your binoculars with you. Remember those 4 keys to bird ID. Okay, shape and size, color and field marks, habitat and behavior. Learn the common birds first. You know, once you know them, then you can say, oh, this is different. I don't know this bird. You know, and you can compare it to the birds you know and start to figure out what it is. Go birding with others. A lot of islands have local birding clubs, or NGOs or government ministries, forestry departments offer field trips. Look around and see if you can find other people to go birding with. I would say every single island has birding experts, so get to know who they are, invite them to go birding with you, or ask them if you can tag along with them. Going along with somebody that's really skilled is super helpful to help to ramp up your skills. And I would say most birders are really generous with their time and knowledge. So go out with them and figure out the birds with them. All right. So thank you for listening and for sticking with us. We did go over time. Sorry about that. If you've stuck with us, that's great. We encourage you to follow us on social media, sign up for our monthly newsletter to stay informed, join Birds Caribbean. We'd love to have you as a member, and join our listserv. So Scott and I thank you. Tahira, we thank you as well for moderating, and Eduardo, we did finally get the closed caption translation going. Thank you for translating. we're happy to stay on and answer your questions if you have some questions for us. I hope this was helpful. Was it helpful?
Me too.
Especially to the new birders? Great. Good to hear it. Yeah. Excellent. We want to hear from you. Keep in touch about your birding journey. Definitely find the other birders on the islands. Yeah. So let us know if you have any questions. We'll hang around for a couple minutes and we'll be happy to answer questions. Scott, any final comments?
Just want to say that it has been a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure working with Birds Caribbean and, you know, engaging the Caribbean populace about birds and the importance of birds and why birds are so amazing. And it is a wonderful experience, especially when you see people who say, hey, I didn't know birds. I didn't know how to identify a bird, but now thanks to Birds Caribbean and other NGOs, now I can identify a species. So I want to thank all of you guys for being so awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being such
wonderful.
an engaged group. And thank you again, Scott, for sharing your experience and your knowledge. You've had, I know, many, many hours in the field monitoring birds and studying birds, and you're just the Bahamian naturalist. So yeah, follow Scott on social media. He's the Bahamian naturalist and he's awesome. So that's great. If you visit the Bahamas, look Scott up. If you visit Grenada, look up Tahira. Tahira, do you have any questions for us?
No, you guys were so great in answering all of the questions. And thanks again to everyone for interacting with us and making this also engaging. Testifying on behalf of the new birders, yes, this was very interesting, very educational, and I learned a lot today. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. All
Awesome.
right. Yes, the apps are free. Somebody was asking about that. eBird and Merlin are both free. So definitely go onto the App Store. It's available for both iOS and Android. So you can get the apps and download and definitely learn how to use them. All right. Well, thanks again to everybody. We will sign off for now, but happy birding, and we look forward to staying in touch with you.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Yep. And don't forget Global Big Day. Sign up for Global Big Day. Join a team.
That's right.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.